Hey everyone, I'm here with a new series that I'm going to be doing, which is Witchcraft 101 or Beginner's Witchcraft. I do have on my Patreon sort of a more deep dive into particular subjects. We take a subject every month and we deep dive into it and talk about it and learn about it and stuff. But this is like for beginners. If you're new, you don't know where to start, you know, or you're getting into it. I'm going to be doing probably every like couple of weeks. That's the plan right now anyway, is to do this series. Now I did record one last week, but my sound quality was like terrible. And also I think it was a bit rambly. This might be a bit rambly as well. Just gonna have a ramble. It's okay. But what we're gonna talk about is what is witchcraft. So there's a ton of different definitions out there in the world that you'll see. But basically, witchcraft is a craft. It is an action. It is doing things. It is not a religion. So that may be a bit of a controversial statement. But what I mean by that is you don't have to be any particular religion to practice witchcraft. You know, if you had asked me that back in the 90s, I might have said something different. But back in the 90s, definitely Wicca was like the form of witchcraft that was most accessible to people. That was what all the books were written about. And Wicca is a religion. It is a set of beliefs. It is a set of practices. It is a religion. And if you practice Wicca, then you probably practice witchcraft. Now, there are some Wiccans who don't ever cast spells, but they're kind of in the minority. But Wicca and witchcraft are kind of tied in together because that particular religion practices witchcraft. But you don't have to be Wiccan to be a witch. There's lots of people who practice witchcraft who practice what's called traditional witchcraft, which is based on local folklore, various other practices. There's the whole African diaspora religions, things like Santeria and Hoodoo and Voodoo, and they practice witchcraft as well, but they're not Wicca. There's also local folklore religions. There's traditional British witchcraft. There's lots of different sort of like types of sort of folklore type witchcraft. You can also be a totally different religion and practice witchcraft. There are Christian witches. Now, there are some people who say, oh, you can't be both. However, you can be Christian and practice witchcraft. And you know, actually, there's historically a lot of that going on. It's important to remember that a lot of witchcraft practices come out of folklore. And a lot of people who considered themselves, especially in the past, to be devout Christians, also practiced things like faith healing, practiced various forms of folklore type magic. But if you told them that it was witchcraft, they would be like, no, that's not. Or if you told them they were a witch, they would be very offended by it. They would say, no, I'm a devout Christian. So, for example, a friend of mine had a great-great-grandmother who was a devout Catholic, but was known for her healing powers, would pray over people, would use herbs, use different rituals to help to heal people. So she's a devout Catholic, but she was also, in modern terms, we would say she was practicing a form of witchcraft. There's also a lot of people who are, devout Christians who also practice forms of, Hoodoo. And if you look at things like Santeria, they often combine elements of Christianity as well as elements from these older practices. So witchcraft is a pretty fluid thing. And what is witchcraft to one person may not be considered witchcraft to another person, or they might be offended if you called it that. But basically what we're doing is we're using magic. We are affecting change in the world in a non-linear fashion. And what I mean by that is, Aleister Crowley used the phrase that magic was, I can't remember the exact phrase now, but basically he said that, it's using your will to affect change in the world. Well, I can use my will to move my hand, but that's not really considered magic. To me, it's about the non-linear effect of things. So it's not directly causal. So if I was to drive my car into a wall, let's say, and I crash my car and break it. Well, I caused that in a linear, logical, fashion. But I wouldn't recommend anybody do this, but if you lit a candle and cast a spell on someone to crash their car and then they crash the car, that's magic because you didn't go out there and physically drive it into the wall, but you did something that caused that. Now, that's a really extreme thing. Don't do that. I wouldn't recommend that. That's for sure. I was just using that as a dramatic example. If we make a little poppet of someone we know who is sick, and we put healing energy into that poppet that represents that person, and that person gets better, well, that's magic. That's it's not linear. We can't, it's in the scientific sort of world, we can't put a direct cause and effect there. If we do a spell for a job, and we apply for something and then we get it, well, we applied for it, so we did do something in the physical world to cause it. However, doing a spell for it, you could be argued that that might have also helped you get the job. So we do also have to cause change in the world. But witchcraft is the practice of that magic, and it's the practice of that. It's it's why it's called a craft. If you look up videos like how-to videos about like how to cast certain spells, often there's ingredients involved. There's like candles, there's herbs, there's crystals, there's all this stuff. It's a craft. Like it's a very hands-on, putting things together sort of activity. It has that name for a reason. Now, you can practice witchcraft without all of those tools and gadgets and things like that, and crystals and herbs. You can just use the power of your mind. And you'll see in a lot of New Age circles, there's, a lot of talk about the power of manifestation, the power of positivity and all that kind of stuff. Manifesting things, vision boards, all of that. Well, you can say that vision boards are a form of witchcraft because we are cutting up pictures, pasting them onto a piece of cardboard, and then, getting results in the world. Well, that's not exactly a linear cause, right? So you can argue that those things are also witchcraft. So as you can see, it's a bit of a broad type definition. But generally speaking, if you are going into an activity like that and you are intending to cause an effect in the world, and it's not in a direct linear fashion, then that I would say is a form of witchcraft. And that's something that, a lot of people who don't consider them witches, don't consider themselves, anything to do with witchcraft at all, still practice in the world. I mean, we blow out candles on a cake and make a wish, right? And that could be seen as a form of witchcraft. So what I'm trying to say is that witchcraft is a practice. It is not about a particular religion. It is a tool like anything else. It's like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house with, or you can use it to hit people over the head with. And that's the same with witchcraft. It is a tool. So you can use your witchcraft for good. You can use it to help people and help yourself, or you can use it to hurt people and harm people. Now, obviously then ethics come into play, and that's a different, whole different topic. And I think that you have to develop your own set of ethics and your own set of rules of where you're coming from. For the longest time, especially, Wicca was the predominant form of witchcraft, at least in the Western world here. At least the one that was most talked about, the one the most books were written about. It talked about the rule of three, that everything is back to in three, sort of this deterrent from doing negative magic. You'll see a lot of different thoughts about that, and I'm going to do a whole other video about that. But I think you have to form your own ethics about things. But as far as what witchcraft is, it is a practice. It's not a religion. You can tie it to religion. It is a form of spirituality. You can certainly tie it to that. But you can be a Christian Wiccan, you can be a Buddhist Wiccan, Wiccan. You can be a Christian witch, you can be a Buddhist witch. You can practice witchcraft and be an atheist. There are atheist witches out there. There are people who they don't believe in a higher power or a higher power that's intelligent. They just believe in using the energy of the universe, so to speak. So you don't have to change your religion necessarily to practice witchcraft. I've seen people do spells where they pray to Jesus as they're doing the spell. So it's out there. It's not something that is, totally unusual. It's out there, that's for sure. So, look, I would say if you're brand new, and you're looking at getting into witchcraft, what I would say is read stuff, read what you can. There's so much out there. There's books, there's the internet, there's YouTube videos like this. Pick one particular area you're interested in and start with that. You can always branch off later, but I would tell people, stick to one thing while you start. So if you're interested in Wicca, start there. If you're interested in hoodoo, start there. If you're interested in chaos magic, start there. And read, give yourself even like a year where you say, I'm going to focus on this one thing. If you're interested in crystal magic, just focus on crystals. Just give yourself a year. Sounds like a long time, but it's really not. To look at books, look at this one area, and then you can branch off later from there. But if you're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff here and there and everywhere, it becomes kind of difficult. It becomes, it's sort of too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people feeding stuff in. So that's why I'd say where to start. But what witchcraft is it's a practice. It's not a religion. It is connected with spirituality because you do have to believe that there's something bigger going on for you to be able to enact changes in those ways. But you can be an atheist and practice witchcraft. It is, like I said, it's a craft called that for a reason. So I will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Let me know if there's any questions or any topics in particular that you would like me to discuss further. If you're interested, I do have on my Patreon, I do have a coven where we're practicing astrocraft, where we are doing witchcraft in accordance with the astrology that's out there in the sky right now, the transits, the full moons, the new moons, all of that stuff. So you can join there. We also do a book club where we're reading High Magic by Damien Eccles. And then in the Witch School, we're talking about animal spirits right now. We're talking about finding your spirit animal. So if you want to connect, you can connect over there. Otherwise, I'll be back, like I said, with another beginner witch episode. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, peace and love and rock.